I was asked to talk a little bit about the transition, specifically a little bit about marriage and parenthood. And just to preface all that, and we've kind of had a theme here tonight, I think, talking about that, but it's part of human nature, all of us, not just people with spina bifida, that we often focus too much on our disabilities rather than our abilities. And we need to instill in our children and help them reach their full potential. And then secondly, don't, as parents, and then as those your kids with spina bifida, don't prejudge their abilities necessarily just because it's something that somebody said they could or couldn't do. For instance, and you have to preface that with obviously with realistic expectations, but at the same time, let your children explore and find out what those expectations are and what they can do. For instance, when I was young, I was probably 12, 13, well, maybe 14, 15 years old, and I'd never really thought about it a whole lot, but no one had. I'd always been told, I'm on my crutches. That's kind of how it is, and I decided one day that I wanted to learn to ride a bike. My parents didn't discourage me. They didn't one way or the other. They didn't know what I could do, but they didn't discourage me. And about 2 weeks later, I was riding a bike, and that's something that nobody ever really thought that that's something I could have done. You do have to, now in terms of, and that just goes along with another preface is help your children develop independence and instill that in them as much as they possibly can. I know there's a wide range of abilities within the spectrum of spina bifida, but help them develop that independence to the fullest possibility they possibly can. And that starts at a young age. When my I don't remember this, but my mom tells me the story of I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, and just started. I started using crutches when I was 3, and I'd be in the grocery store with my mom, and then I'd slip, and she'd sit there and she'd wait, and for me to get up and to get myself up and to continue on, and just kind of watch there and look and watch me and where there was others around her that would try and rush to help me up or do those types of things, and she purposely, even though that's probably one of the hardest things she did, she purposely did that. It's just one example of teaching independence at a young age, and you have to do that from a young age and throughout your life. There's obviously, in terms of marriage and parenthood and adulthood, the reason I mention that is because independence is a huge key, as far as what you're able to do in adulthood and in marriage and if you're able to have the blessing of being a parent. There's issues you need to be taken into account. Obviously, we talked about the bowel and bladder type things. You need to find ways to, and that's why some of these things are so important, because they help them develop those, have the interventions necessary so they can have that independence. With that, going into transitions, first I'll talk a little bit about marriage. It's a huge transition for everyone, and obviously, depending on your ability, it may not happen for everybody here, but I think you need to set the expectations of, explore and find out what the expectations are, and don't set them beforehand. I don't think anyone feels adequate going into marriage. It doesn't matter whether you have spina bifida or anything else. All you can do is prepare as best you can, and then exercise, the faith that together you can face the challenges ahead. But one of the key things is communication. Your future spouse, when you're contemplating marriage, they need to know all the specifics on your issues, your bowel and bladder, all the different care that hopefully you've developed an independence enough to take care of that a lot of that on your own, but they need to know those issues and what they are, the medications you take. They need to know some of the recurring issues. For instance, stasis ulcers, commonly known as bed sores, those types of things. That happens a lot more in people with wheelchairs, but that's something that I deal with too. And that's a recurring issue that it's not always there, but you need to know that those types of issues are there. And when those types of issues come up, what are the how will medical service be rendered? I mean, is that something that your spouse is going to help you with? If you need some extra assistance in some of those areas, is that something where you may be bringing home health care? But have those types of things, issues discussed, and so they're out there. And another one, and obviously when you talk about marriage, is you have to talk a little bit about sex and intimacy and those types of things. You need to have a frank discussion. Your child, not the parent, but your child needs to have this frank discussion with the doctors, probably beforehand, and then if need be with the future spouse, and know what some of those issues are, what the possibilities are. Is it possible to have children? Is it something that's possible? It may be. In a lot of cases, you may be told it's possible, but it's an unknown until you can explore that. There's counselors and social workers and different avenues through Primary Children's, through the clinic. You can explore that with counselors and with doctors and et cetera, just to know what the possibilities are for you and your individual situation.